What's up, you guys, and welcome back to part 4 of my air compressor setup is terrible series. Today is a very exciting day as we get to install our dual armed hose reel from Tekton. One of my biggest pet peeves is stepping on air hoses or tripping over extension cords while I'm working. And that's one of the nicest things about getting the chance to redo my whole air compressor setup project that we're in the midst of, is that I'm actually taking the time to put a lot more thought into how I'm organizing the air hoses throughout the shop. Alright, let's talk about what they include with the Tekton 50-foot 3/8 dual arm hose reel. Obviously, your user manual, go ahead and toss that aside, nobody ever reads it anyway. I'm just kidding. There's actually some useful information here about the typical stuff. How you would mount it, how you operate it, installation procedures, orientation, type of wood or lag screws or machine screws on how to mount it. This includes a parts diagram and wearable parts. As I noted before, the swivel only has 2 serviceable O-rings, and that's all that can leak, and that is the main reason why I went with this one instead of the single arm. This talks about how to lengthen the stop on the hose. This talks about how to, if it doesn't have enough recoil or too much recoil, and how you would fix that, and it's basically just unwind the hose and wind it around one more time through the stop, or take the stop off, unwind the hose, and route it around. Pretty simple. Here's a serviceable diagram for that swivel. Again, only 2 O-rings and a snap ring. Holds everything in place. Very good design, very simple, and is not prone to leakage like the other axle type through fittings on some other hose reels. Now you can toss it. They also include some standard Teflon tape, a spare set of O-rings so you don't have to go out and buy any right away, and a clip in there as well, a circlip, or snap ring, I'm sorry, a snap ring in there as well. So if it does leak on you, all you gotta do is throw the new ones in and you'll be back in business without having to order any parts. The nice thing about this kit is they do include a swivel fitting. A lot of the other hose reel companies do not include this, and it makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to connect a lead-in hose without any swivel fittings. You end up with a big old jumbled mess of hose and very difficult to install. So thumbs up, props to Tekton for including this key component. I didn't know that came with it, so I bought a 3-foot hose whip with a swivel end. That's typically what I've put on the other cheaper reels that I've dealt with, because they don't come with this fitting. However, because I do have this fitting in this kit, what I'll probably end up doing is ordering a 3-foot whip with just the straight ends, just to allow for that little bit more flow up into the hose reel. This is probably the bottleneck in the system. It's fairly small, but the holes in this hose look to be smaller. It's probably not going to affect it either way, but this fitting right here is just, if I don't have to put it on, I'm not gonna. So I'm just gonna use a regular hose with male pipe thread ends, and we're gonna install that as soon as I get another one in, and I'll save this for a tool or something to connect it to in the future. Well, one thing I want to talk about here is this is probably the reason that I bought this style. The single piece design is a much better design when it comes to sealability and less prone to leakage. You'll see some other designs, which I'll post up a picture here, the typical Harbor Freight style. Not that that's bad, it is a much cheaper alternative, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, this has a much better design as far as seals go, and this was the only one that came on the dual arm setup. I don't know if you can actually change this out and put it on another style, but I imagine so, because it does have male threads on the back side of this fitting. So you might just be able to buy this fitting itself and install it into whatever axle of hose reel that you have. But that in and of itself, this piece right here can make or break a hose reel as far as durability and leakage go. Everything else on the reel is pretty standard. All these are made in China, so you're not going to see too many differences between the name on the side. This hose is made in USA. I'm sure it's a Goodyear hose that they've sold the licenses to and the rights to be able to manufacture for another vendor. In this case, the vendor is Tekton. Good spring. Now I intend to mount this from the ceiling, coming straight down, so we probably will have to reorient the arm. Not a big deal. Plenty of positions that it can be in. So I backed this up with a piece of 3/4 ply and already nailed it into the trusses on the back side, and that will provide me a solid mounting surface to run the lag screws or nuts through. Tekton recommends the use of bolts and nuts on both sides. So we'll follow their recommendations and ensure a sturdy mount for years to come. That's the last thing I want to think about when I'm going to grab a hose, is if the thing is going to rip off where I've got it mounted. Now this thing is not light by any means. It weighs a good 37 pounds. That's the actual shipping weight. So with the box and everything, we can safely assume it's over 30 pounds. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be lifting 30 pounds above my head trying to mount it. So one of the best favors you can do yourself before you go to mount this is to actually unreel the hose. This thing is still fairly heavy, but for most do-it-yourselfers, it becomes a fairly manageable project.
One great thing about this kit is they do include a template for the mounting holes, and it is accurate. I can't tell you how many Chinese pieces of equipment I've bought over the years that include a template, and you go to drill and mark the holes using it, and they don't line up with the actual product. So another thumbs up to Tekton Engineering, R&D department, and quality control here. They actually made an accurate template. Instead of hoisting the thing overhead and trying to mark the holes on top of a ladder, I just took the template up and used some cabinet screws to affix it to the recessed portion of the wood, taking care to make sure that the piece of paper is perfectly flat and stretched out with no wrinkles, to make sure that the holes actually do indeed line up with where they're supposed to be. And for me, it was literally just that easy. Drill the screws in the holes and see how flat the template lays. And all we do now is take the screws out and drill the holes where the cabinet screws were. Real simple. I just used an undersized bit. We're going to be using 3/8 inch hardware here, and if you use a 3/8 inch drill bit, the screws or bolts, whatever you're using, won't actually be able to bite into the wood. And in this case, I wanted to mount the reel without having the actual nuts on the back side yet, and doing it this way allowed me to actually run the screws in through the 3/4 inch backing plywood without having anything attached, and it still held up the weight of the reel. This is not recommended, but it was a short process, and we were able to get the washers, lock washers, and nuts on the back side of it without the hose reel falling down. If you're going to do it this way, do so at your own risk. I take no liability for it falling down before you get the nuts on the back of the bolts. Alright, so the hose reel is mounted. There has been some comments of not the actual mounting bolts, but the bolts that are used to mount the backing plate to the frame itself being loose upon receiving. So you might want to check those before you install it. I checked mine, they were nice and tight. So that's one less thing I have to worry about. Now I'm just resetting the stop on the hose to allow me to be able to walk by the hose and grab it anytime without hitting my head on it. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to click like, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notifications. That way you get in touch, in tune with all of the stuff we post as quick as we post it. Once again, we appreciate you watching. And until next time, if you're not going to watch this stuff, why don't you get out in your shop and go build something?